What is the reason that the United States, despite being the world's largest oil producer, cannot fully use its own oil? It's like a person who grows wheat on his own land but still has to beg others for food. The world we live in often isn't what it seems on the surface. Reality is often the opposite. Similarly, millions of containers arrive in the US from China every year, but why are many of them left to rot as waste? And in the middle of all this, how and why does Iran smuggle Boeing 777 aircraft? Welcome back to History World. Do you know that at any given moment, nearly 300,000 ships are present in the oceans? These include oil tankers, LPG and LNG carriers, tugboats, passenger ships, and most importantly, container ships that keep the global economy running. Around 90% of global trade moves through sea routes. According to estimates, 6,000 to 8,000 container ships are traveling across the oceans at any given minute. Thanks to systems like ICE Automatic Identification System, these ships can now be tracked in real time. If you visit websites like Marine Traffic or Vessel Finder, the oceans appear filled with tiny lights. Each light represents a massive ship carrying goods worth millions of dollars. Most of these ships originate from China and travel to Europe and the United States. On average, each ship carries about 5,000 containers, meaning roughly 40 million containers are moving across the oceans at any given time. Everything, from your clothes to your smartphone, once traveled in these containers. At first glance, it seems simple. Goods arrive, containers return empty. But the reality is far more complex and troubling. The global trade imbalance. China exports far more than it imports. In 2023 alone, China's trade surplus exceeded $823 billion. Exports: $3.38 trillion. Imports: $2.557 trillion. This imbalance creates a major problem. When containers arrive in the US or Europe, there isn't enough export cargo to fill them for the return journey. In the US, only about 40% of containers go back filled. So where do the other 60% go? You might think they return empty, but that's not the case. They pile up in junkyards across America. Why? Because sending an empty container back to China costs about $3,000, and it occupies space that could be used for a fully loaded container worth thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, China can manufacture a new container for about $2,000, so it doesn't need the old ones. Every year, around 2.5 million new containers are built. What happens to these containers? Sold as cheap storage units. Used in construction, homes and offices. Melted down for steel, each container contains approximately 2 tons of steel. So next time you see stacks of containers at a port, remember. They're not just scrap. They're a symbol of a broken global trade system. Why the US can't fully use its own oil? Now to the big question. The US is the world's largest oil producer, yet also one of the biggest importers. Why? There are 3 major reasons. 1. Oil chemistry. Not all oil is the same. US produces light crude oil, low viscosity. Many US refineries are designed for heavy crude oil. These refineries were built decades ago to process oil from countries like Mexico and Venezuela. Upgrading them would cost over $200 billion. So instead, the US exports its light oil at higher prices. Imports cheaper heavy crude for refining. 2. Logistics problems. Oil is produced in one place, but refineries are located elsewhere. For example, Texas produces massive amounts of oil, but transporting it to the East Coast requires pipelines that don't exist. California is even worse. It acts like an oil island, importing about 70% of its oil due to pipeline limitations. 3. The Jones Act. After World War I, the U.S. passed a law requiring that goods transported between U.S. ports must be carried by U.S.-built ships, U.S.-owned ships, U.S. crewed ships. This law, known as the Jones Act, made domestic shipping extremely expensive. As a result, shipping oil within the U.S. can add $5 per barrel. Sometimes it's cheaper to import oil from abroad than move domestic oil internally. A law meant to protect the U.S. ended up creating inefficiencies. Iran and the Boeing 777 smuggling story. Now let's talk about Iran. Due to sanctions, Iran cannot legally buy aircraft from Western countries. Yet, Its airline fleet includes Western aircraft. How? In 2024-2025, Iran surprised the world by acquiring 5 Boeing 777 aircraft. Here's how it happened. The planes were sitting unused in a desert aircraft graveyard in Australia. A US-based shell company purchased them. They were moved to China. Then sold to a fake company in Madagascar. Registered under Madagascar's flag, avoiding US oversight. Transferred to Cambodia, with weaker aviation regulations. In July 2025, the planes filed flight plans to Kenya. While flying over Afghanistan, they turned